Very good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of Stuart Close Philosophy, and we are discussing since long time the chapter Potentiation and Infinitesimal Dose, where Stuart Close tried to explain the scientific aspects of the homeopathy and scientific aspects behind the infinitesimal dose. He is trying to correlate the basic science, its laws, and the laws of homeopathy, and how Hahnemann's concept of potentiation and the infinitesimal dose, it becomes rather exactly based upon the laws of basic science that he tried to explain over there. He has taken the help of the Newton's third law of motion, that is actions and reactions are equal and opposite, which is also called to be a law of reciprocal action. He has taken into consideration the law of least action, that dose the minimum dose is the dose which is just sufficient to make any change in the universe, is the law of least action. Then third law which he has utilized from the physics, that matter is indestructible and infinitesimally divisible, that also he has taken into consideration. So every aspect of the physics and their correlation with the homeopathy, in the specifically in preparing the medicines potentiation, he is trying to correlate over there in order to say whatever is there in homeopathy is scientific, it's not the placebo therapy. And how an atom or a molecule carries the same properties of the same material substance, even it is very small, infinite. And that aspect he tried to explain. We were on page number 230. Let us start with the first paragraph itself. In physics, the structural unity molecule is distinguished from the atom and applied to the particles of gases in the kinetic theory, independently of their relation to the chemical molecules. Lord Kelvin illustrates the size of molecule as follows. Imagine a raindrop or a globe of glass as large as a pea to, to be magnified up to the size of Earth, each constituent molecule being magnified in the same proportion. The magnified structure would be coarser grained than heap of small shot, but probably less coarse grained than the heap of the cricket ball. The smallest material thing in the world, the last in the series of little things known to the modern science, is the electron or electric corpuscle. It is supposed that the chemical atoms are composed of collection of electrons having orbital motion in sphere of positive electrification. The electron is conceived to be billions of times smaller than the atom. A French scientist compares the electrons in the atoms to gnats, the dome of cathedral. So he is explaining the concept, what is infinitesimal, what is so small. And he is trying to explain that it is as small as molecule or as small as a electron which is moving in the circuit of an atom which is positively charged. So it is so finite, and people have reached to that level to explain the concept of electrons. He explains this because if you are considering that electrons are positively charged, and if you reach to that, then when you divide the medicine in such a manner, what you brings out that specific level of the up an atom. It was formerly supposed that atom was the smallest component part of the matter. For a long time, the atom had only a theoretical existence, its existence being assumed in order to account for chemical combinations which takes place between different elements in certain proportion. Even the ultra microscope, which enables us to see and count particles of the gold in ruby glass averaging 6 millionths of the millimeter in diameter, failed to reveal the atom. It remained for Rutherford studying radium with his electroscope to identify and count the individual atoms. Zeeman of Amsterdam, studying light through the spectroscope, split the spectral line of flame by holding the flame between the poles of powerful electromagnet, proving that light is an electric phenomenon and showing a close relationship between the activities of atoms and the original origin of light itself. Langley of the Smithsonian Institution invented the bolometer, which measures variations of temperatures of 100th billionth of degree. This represents the change of temperature about equal to the produced by candle 5 miles distance. So there are many instruments have been developed and considered to be scientific, which measures minute amounts. So there are spectrometers, there are bolometers to find it out the finity. But they themselves also have very specific limitation. Even though bolometer, which measures frequency of light, even 5 miles distance of a candle, so if you keep it up more than that, you cannot. So it means that science goes up to certain limitation. With any new invention, you can go beyond that, but you cannot reach to that level which you expect generally. This doesn't mean that you are not scientific. This means that science has its own limitation. This means that you cannot exactly tell in the material form the specific with the some example that yes, this is present. Light traveling through the space at the rate of 186,000 miles per second has been found to exert a distant push or pressure. Hence, radiation, the force opposed to gravitation, must be considered in studying the movements of the matter in a state of infinitesimal subdivision. This pressure force is measured by radiometer invented by two American physicists, Professor Nicholas and Hull. It is used in connection with bolometer in measurement of rays from the radioactive substances. Pfund and of Johns Hopkins University in 1930 perfected a still more sensitive instrument said to be capable of measuring a degree of heat equivalent to that given off by candle 60 miles away. Finally, ether, the all-pervading space-filling entity, is regarded as something which is neither matter nor the energy, but which serves as a medium through which both the matter and energy are transmitted. Science regards the ether as an intangible or immaterial substance which acts like solid, but which allows ordinary matter to pass through it without resistance or disturbance. When it is caused to vibrate at certain speed or rate, it becomes visible as light. Light is defined as an electromagnetic disturbance of the ether. Ordinary. Light is defined as the result of electric oscillations or vibrations in molecules or atoms of the hot body, or sometimes of bodies not hot, as in the phenomena of phosphorescence. So, again, he is giving the examples of different measurements. It is related to the light. You can go day by day with newly developed certain states or certain instruments. You can go beyond that, but there has certain limitation. So such a thing, such measures sometimes are also have a limitation to measure certain things, and that if the things are present but still you cannot measure, it is not unscientific. Sir Oliver Lodge says the waves of light are not anything mechanical or material, but are something electrical or magnetic. They are, in fact, electrical disturbances periodic in space and time, traveling with known and tremendous speed through the ether of space. Their very existence depends upon the ether. Their speed of propagation is its best known quantitative property. So, he is explaining the example of light, how it can be measured and how it can be defined, and how this travels through the space or which travels through the ether. And such a fine thing which you cannot catch or you cannot show in the material form, substantial thing. The similar is the homeopathic medicine. It has its own significance in the substantial value. Without the substance, you cannot show it, you cannot explain it. Speaking of the ether, Lodge says the ether has not yet been brought under the domain of simple mechanics. It has not yet been reduced to the motion or force. That probably because the force aspect of it has been so singularly elusive that it is a question whether we ought to think of it as a material at all. Undoubtedly, the ether belongs to the material or physical universe, but it is not ordinary matter. I should prefer to say it is not matter at all. It may be the substance or substratum or material of which matter is composed, but it would be confusing and inconvenient not to be able to discriminate between matter on one hand and ether on the other. He further says, we do not yet know what electricity is and what the ether is. We have as yet no dynamical explanation of either of them. But the past century has taught us what seems to their student an overwhelming quantity of facts about them. And when the present century or the century after, let us deeper into their secrets and into the secrets of some other phenomena now in the course of being rationally investigated. I feel as if it would be no merely material prospect that will be opening on our view, but some glimpse into the region of the universe which science has never entered yet, but which has been sought from far, and perhaps blindly apprehended by painter or poet and by philosopher and son. This is collected from the Lodge, The Ether of Space. So he is giving this scientific explanation that how this ether which is there, ether means an empty space around us is called to be ether. It looks empty, but it contains many particles, but which are not visible to your naked eye. But still you have to consider that because when a ray of sunlight passes, at that time you can catch that it contains many more material substances. This is the thing with which many types of waves can be passed. For example, your mobile, the sound waves. For example, the light waves. So those are passed through the same ether, which is not visible to a naked eye. But still, you have to consider yes, it has a substantial value. And this similar thing, which is there with the homeopathic medicine when potentized. You have to consider yes, it is there because on the basis of cause and effect. The energy is there because once you give it to the healthy human being for a certain period, it starts showing its effects in the human being. It means it exists over there, but you cannot watch it, you cannot show it, you cannot find it out over there. And that's why he explains over there with the help of all those measures, the things which science considers and exist, or science says these are truth. The same is true with the homeopathy. As a summary of present knowledge, Sir Oliver defines the ether of space as a continuous, incompressible, stationary fundamental substance, or a perfect fluid with what is equivalent to the inertia coefficient of 10 raised to 12 grams per cc. That matter is composed of modified and electrical specks or minute structures of the ether, which are amenable to the mechanical as well as to the electrical force, and are and add to the optical and electric density of the medium, and that the elastic rigidity and all the potential energy are due to the excessively fine-grained ethereal circulation with an intrinsic kinetic energy of the order of 10 raised to 33 ergs per cubic centimeter. Wilford Hall, PhD, LLD, founder of the substantial philosophy in the problem of human life, had proved logically as early as 1875 that all the fundamental forces of the universe, including life, electricity, and ether of the space, are substantial entities, incorporeal, intangible, and invisible, but capable of being perceived, measured, and weighed. So, here he is giving examples of ether, he is giving examples of light. Here he is giving examples of sound. All those things which you can show only with the help of substance, but you cannot show exactly what it is. The same is true with the homeopathic medicines when potentized. You cannot find it out, the original medicine in that, but you can show, yes, it acts in the healthy human being, producing its effects and works over there. So things becomes more and more fine. So up to the level that where you cannot measure, and that's why it is called as infinitesimal. The same thing happens over there with the ether. Same thing happens with the electricity. Same thing happens with the life. All those things to which we label, these are nothing but the substantial entities. Substantial entities means which cannot be seen unless and until we take the help of substance. And then only we can explain, yes, these are present. Then comes the next thing, that is the modern science has practically accepted this conclusion. For the today, we have Sir Oliver Lodge, the greatest living correlator and interpreter of the facts of science, defining the ether of space as the most tenuous and refined substance known to the science, and submitting mathematical computations of physical property. Having anticipated the theory and conclusions of the chemists and physicists by clinical experience with high potencies in the treatment of sick, the followers of Hahnemann are in a position to maintain the authority that the curative power of the drug is not lost when it is diluted to such a degree that a dose represents an amount of actual drug substance to so small as to be practically unassignable quantity. In other words, an infinitesimal quantities. So he is now coming to the homeopathy. After explaining all the phenomenon which are present in the universe, which we call or consider to be a dynamic or substantial, the same thing which is there with the homeopathy, it is also a dynamic and substantial, specifically the potentized medicine. And he explains the homeopathic medicine is also substantial. Yes, you have, it carries the energy, it carries the its own properties, but you cannot find it out the original matter. It is so infinitely level divisible that you cannot reach to that with the scientific method. But still, it works and it produces its effects when proved. But the doctrine of potentiation and infinitesimal dose has another important application in the medicine. Pinke, on higher potency, says this originates in specific action of noxious matter, which is either produced within the organism or brought in from without, and it is always carried on by the process of assimilation. Assimilation everywhere is accompanied by potentiation by rendering the infinitesimal particles of the matter susceptible and active according to their inherent affinity. As homeopathic remedies are obtained by potentiation, that is by communicating and refining drug matter by means of vehicle easily assimilable. So nutritious matter appears to act as a vehicle in the natural potentiation of those noxious material with the organism itself prepares as remedies for its own self-preservation, antitoxins and antibodies. So now he is explaining that how the these homeopathic medicines or higher potencies works. He explains over there that the way the disease develops because of dynamic inimical noxious agencies. Many of us never understands what exactly it is. We define that a miasm is present. What is miasm? Again, we'll define that these are dynamic noxious agents which runs from generations together are called as miasms. But what it is nothing but the entities which are dynamic, substantial, which are there hidden in the mind, which are there hidden in the inner dynamics of the human life, and which reflects in the form of disease whenever some exciting cause develops or whenever any exciting thing develops. So it is it happens to be there, disease happens to be there in the dynamic plane by the dynamic noxious inimical agency, and it produces its symptoms in the form of some signs and symptoms as a disease. In the similar manner, whenever we give the homeopathic medicine, it should work at the same plane. The material medicine, if you give to the patient who is suffering from such types of disorders, never works, never cures, because it never works in the same plane. So, if the disease has been developed in the dynamic plane, it should be treated with the dynamic homeopathic medicine, which will work in the similar type of plane and brings back the cure. And that's why the concept of dynamic medicine developed in Hahnemann's mind, and gradually he developed both the methods, the succussion and trituration. This is how he went ahead and developed whole processes. As a whole, as the whole organism draws upon digestion as the source of nutrition, so every part and particle of the organism draws upon various materials successively worked out by the different processes of animal chemistry for its own proper nutriment, and assimilates them for its own particular use and subsistence. Thus, the lacteals draw upon chyle prepared by digestion, and lymphatics upon transudation of the capillaries, and blood upon the fluids of either of these, and nerves upon the blood. So, he is explaining there that the similar method, similar dynamic entities happens in our body when we consume the food. It is converted into such a form that the energy gets liberated from it, and we get the strength from it. Then he has given the example that as the blood flows through the blood vessels and the nerves get stimulated, where the supply of blood is necessary also over there. All those things, some of things are visible, rest of the things are not visible. So it has both the values, the substantial value, dynamic value as well as material value. Without that, you cannot. So whenever you have to think about potency, you have to take the help of the material substance and you can tell it, but you cannot show what medicine does it contain. If a bottle of, for example, aconite 1 m is given to you and it has been not labeled and asked you what medicine does it contains, it's rather difficult to find it out what medicine it contains in the material form, and you cannot show. But if you prove that, then it starts showing its own symptomatology. And on the basis of symptomatology, you can catch it might be aconite. So this is the only method with which you can approach, but you cannot show its material existence. And that's what the base of infinitesimal dose is. So I think we will stop over here and we'll continue with in tomorrow's session. Most probably we'll finish this lengthy chapter, and he is trying to explain all this science in order to explain that homeopathy is not at all a placebo therapy. So concept of infinitesimal dose with the help of many laws and many examples from different basic sciences, he is trying to correlate with the homeopathy so that it becomes rather easy to understand everyone that it has a scientific value. So that's all for today. Tomorrow we'll continue with it and we'll finish this. I think this is the last chapter of the syllabus or not. Just we'll check. There is one more chapter on the drug potential is there still from the third year syllabus that will start. So thank you being there. Today we're going to meet again at 8:15 with new remedy from the fourth year syllabus. Be there so that we can learn the practical aspects of that at 8:15. So good evening and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.